Welcome to the Lambton College International Graduate Services and Support Center, your dedicated resource for navigating life after graduation. We know the journey can be complex, from understanding immigration processes to making career decisions and expanding your professional network. That's why we're here, to simplify these challenges and support your transition into Canadian life. At the International Graduate Services and Support Center, our mission extends beyond your academic achievements. We are here to facilitate your successful integration into the Canadian workforce and society. From career counseling to workshops on Canadian workplace culture and immigration support, our services are tailored to meet the unique needs of international graduates. We're committed to empowering you with the tools and knowledge necessary for success. Embrace the opportunity to connect with fellow graduates and professionals through our networking events and stay informed with our comprehensive webinars covering a range of topics crucial for your postgraduate success. Remember, the path to achieving your aspirations is a journey we undertake together. Ready to take the next step? Visit our website and join our supportive community. Remember to follow us on Instagram and on LinkedIn for upcoming immigration webinars, networking events, and much more. Together, let's make your postgraduate journey a success.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Cristina Yiguren, and I'm the coordinator of International Graduate Services and Support Center. I want to remind you that we are recording this webinar so you can watch it again on our YouTube channel, and you're also going to get a recording. I want to invite you as well to follow us on our social media channels. This is where we're going to post our upcoming events. If you are from the finance and business programs, I recommend you to stay tuned and check your email. Keep an eye there because we have a great surprise for you coming up shortly. I would like to start today by welcoming our future graduates who are joining this session. We are thrilled to have you with us as you become part of our community. Your presence here signifies a step towards achieving your goals, and we're excited to support you in this journey. This center is dedicated to assisting you, our international graduates, as you seek employment and settle into Canadian life following graduation. International graduates from Mississauga, Toronto, Sarnia, and Ottawa have access to immigration, career advice, and networking events. There are countless reasons why you can take pride in being a Lambton graduate, as I'm also proud of working here. We've been ranked as one of Canada's top research colleges, and we're here to support you all the way, even after graduation, with the services I just mentioned. We're committed to help you with your post-graduation journey. This webinar is crucial at this time due to recent changes in immigration laws and increasing score requirements for permanent residency. Our goal is to equip you with the necessary tools to navigate these challenges and prepare you for what's coming next. Language proficiency, whether in French or English, and it will be ideal in both, can help you earn the points you need to succeed. And this is why we have prepared this webinar today with two amazing guests. We want to prepare you for the IELTS exam today. So we were going to have a Q&A section after both interventions and a survey that I recommend you to reply so that we can keep improving for you. First, we're going to start with Heather. Heather Donnelly has been an ISL and communication instructor for 12 years, working for various Canadian post-secondary institutions. Since 2015, she has taught English and IELTS at Fanshawe College, and she has prepared students to succeed in IELTS. Heather is also a certified CPIP instructor dedicated to helping international students to their professional goals. Thank you so much, Heather, for being with us. Heather is also a friend from Lambton College. It's an honor to have you with us today, Heather. Now you have the stage. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christina. It's great to be here. All right, so I'll just get my presentation up here. All right, so here we go. I have a lot to get through today, but as Christina said, this webinar is being recorded, so you can go back and, slow things down if you need to later on. All right, so today I'm going to be talking about what the IELTS exam is and how it's scored, the 4 different skills, so listening, reading, writing, and speaking. So the format of the skills, how they're scored, and common problems to avoid. Then I'll talk a little bit about some pre-preparation materials you can find. And finally, I'll do a short comparison between the IELTS and the CPIP so you can have a better idea of which one might be better for you. All right, so what is the IELTS exam? So the IELTS, as you might know, is an acronym, and it stands for the International English Language Testing System. And as I just said, there's 4 different exams that you need to complete. So the listening, reading, writing, and speaking. There are 2 different types of IELTS exams. One is the IELTS Academic, which some of you might have already taken, and that's to get admission to English-speaking colleges and universities. And the other is the focus of today, which is the IELTS General, which is used for immigration and PR purposes. All right, so how is the IELTS exam scored? So each exam section is scored from 0 to 9. And then afterwards, all of the scores in the 4 sections are combined to reach an overall score out of 9. And this score is known as a band score. So here is a little table that just describes what each band score corresponds with. So a 9, for example, would be considered an expert user. All right, so let's start off with the IELTS listening exam. So the IELTS listening is completed in about 30 minutes. And then after that, if you're taking the paper-based exam, you'll have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to a test sheet. Okay, there are 4 sections and 4 recordings. And the recordings are heard only once. And if you've taken the academic exam, this will be exactly the same. All right, so there's 4 different sections, and each section has 10 marks. Recording number 1 is a conversation from daily life between 2 speakers. Section 2 is a talk or a speech about a topic from daily life. This is 1 speaker, perhaps a radio broadcast. Section 3 is a conversation in an academic environment between 2 to 4 speakers. So perhaps, 2 students in a class are talking to each other, or a teaching assistant and a student are talking. And then the final one is an academic lecture on 1 topic by 1 speaker. And each section gets progressively harder. So section 1 is the easiest and section 4 is the most challenging. And on each section, you're going to see a variety of different questions. So you might be asked to complete notes, sentences, or summaries, give a short answer, and this would be where you would include the exact word from the recording. You might be asked to do multiple choice, labeling diagrams or maps, or matching. So for the IELTS listening band score, so as we talked about, there are 40 marks, but the scoring will vary slightly by test, depending on the difficulty. But in general, this little table provides you with an understanding of how many correct answers you need to get a particular band score. So for example, an IELTS 6 would be a 23 out of 40 on most tests. Common problems students have on the listening test include the following. So it's really important that you use the correct spelling and grammar when you're giving your answers on the testing sheet. So for grammar, that includes whether you're doing singular or plural, you have to include whatever the lecture said, and you also have to capitalize proper nouns. Now, what some students do, if they're unsure about what to capitalize, they just write everything in caps, and that's completely acceptable. All right, students also have trouble hearing numbers accurately, so the difference between 13 and 30. Understanding different time expressions, so quarter past, half past, and quarter to. And understanding directions if they need to label a map. So it's really important that you understand different prepositions. So things like next to, across from, beside. Students also have trouble understanding that questions in sections 3 and 4 are paraphrased. So the speaker will say one thing, and then the question will say something different. So for example, the question might be, when did the plane leave Toronto Airport? So the speaker will say, the plane departed from Toronto at 7 p.m. So instead of leave, they'll say departed. Okay. It's also important to understand that sometimes the answer is given before the question. So, for example, on the test sheet, it might say, which province in Canada gets the most rain? So the speaker likely won't say the province in Canada that gets the most rain is British Columbia, because that is just repeating the question. The speaker is more likely to say British Columbia is Canada's rainiest province. So it's really important to understand that these two things. In addition, the speaker might change their mind while answering the question. So they'll say one thing and then change to something else. So for example, the question might be, okay, when will Sarah visit Scotland? All right, so Sarah says, I plan to take my vacation to Scotland in January. Her friend Rachel says, are you sure that's a good idea? Scotland is very cold and rainy in January, and I know that you hate the cold weather. How about going in July? Sarah replies, I picked January because there are fewer tourists, but I think I will follow your advice. So in this case, Sarah will now be going to Scotland in July as opposed to January. So she changed her mind. All right, now the IELTS reading. So the IELTS reading is 60 minutes. And there are 3 sections with 2,150 to 2,750 words overall in those 3 sections. Like the listening exam, the first section is the easiest and the last section is the hardest. And the number of marks will vary between 11 and 15 per section. In section number 1, you'll be asked to read 2 or 3 short texts or several shorter texts on everyday topics. So things like notices in a newspaper, advertisements, or a timetable. In section 2, you have to read 2 texts related to a work topic. So a job description, contract, development, training materials. And in section 3, you're going to read 1 longer text that is descriptive, meaning it gives detailed information, and instructive, it tells you to do something. And this is something you would find in a newspaper, magazine, or a book. All right, and also like the listening test, you're going to encounter a variety of different questions. So again, completing notes, sentences, and summaries, short answer. Again, you're going to be taking words directly from the reading. Multiple choice, true, false, not given, yes, no, not given, labeling maps or diagrams, or matching information. Okay, a reading band score. So like listening, there's 40 marks, and the scoring will vary a little bit by test. But by and large, this is how the reading exam is scored. Now, one thing you'll see is that the academic and general scoring is different. So for example, if you had a 23 out of 40 on the academic, that would be a band 6. However, if you had a 23 out of 40 on the general, that's only a band 5. So that means that it's a little bit harder to get a higher score in the general training. You need to get more questions correct. All right, some common problems with reading. So many students try to read every word. And the problem is that you likely won't have enough time to do this. So what you need to do is to read the questions before starting each passage. And you need to skim and scan to find the information that you need. So the keywords. Many students also try to understand every word. And again, this typically isn't necessary. So what you need to do is, if there is a word that you think you do need to understand to answer a question, what you should do is look for the context clues to help you understand the meaning. So context clues are words and sentences near the word that will give you an indication of what that more challenging word might mean. All right, in addition, students often spend too much time on one question. So since there are 40 questions that you need to answer in 60 minutes, you want to make sure that you're spending only 1 or 2 minutes per question. And then after that, just take a guess and move on. And if you have time, you can circle the question and then come back later. But yes, only 1 to 2 minutes per question. Also, it's important, like the listening exam, to understand that the questions might paraphrase what you see in the reading. So for example, the question on the paper might be, what 2 characteristics do good painters have? But the reading passage might say, creativity is a key trait for a successful artist, as is perseverance. So here, instead of characteristic, they're using the word trait. Okay, in general, I would say that students have the most problems answering true, false, not given, and yes, no, not given questions. And a strategy for this is to look for words that show 100% certainty about something. So words like always, never, can't. Typically, when we see these sorts of words, the answer will be false or no. So if you're in a hurry and you have trouble with these sorts of questions, this is a good strategy to use. Now, moving on to IELTS Speaking. So IELTS Speaking is done between 11 to 14 minutes. There are 3 parts, and you will speak one-on-one with an examiner. And this is also the same as the academic exam. So if you've prepared for the academic exam before, you'll have a good understanding of what the speaking test will look like on the general test as well. So in the 3 parts vary between 3 to 5 minutes each. In the first part, you're going to be asked to answer questions about very familiar topics, who you are, what's your home country, what are your ambitions, what do you do for work, that sort of thing. In the second part, what will happen is you'll be given about 4 to 5 questions on a cue card. You'll have 1 minute to prepare your answers for those questions and then have 2 minutes to speak. And then in part 3, you're going to be answering questions that are related to part 2. So if in part 2 you were asked about a person that you admire, who they are and what they did, in part 3 you might be asked about, which type of people are admired in your home country. Is it politicians, athletes, musicians? So there's always a connection between part 2 and part 3. All right, speaking band score. So when your speaking is assessed, the assessor is going to be using a rubric with 4 different areas. So the first area is fluency and coherence. The second is lexical resource, also known as vocabulary. The third is grammatical range and accuracy, and the fourth is pronunciation. And each criteria, each skill is given equal weight. So each is worth 25% in determining your band score. So let's talk a little bit more about each category. So to get a good mark in fluency and coherence, you have to speak with minimal pausing, repetition, and self-correction. You need to give detailed responses with good examples. And it's important to know that on the speaking exam, the examiner will not prompt you to give more detail. They won't say things like, oh, that's an interesting comment. Can you tell me a bit more about this? So the examiner won't say that. It will be your job to give the examples by yourself. Okay, and it's also important to use different, what we call connective devices. So for example, words that show cause and effect. So words like since, hence, therefore, words that make comparison, contrast, addition, examples, conclusion, and time. So these are all good things to understand. Okay, to get a good score in the vocabulary part, you need to use varied vocabulary. So you want to use as much vocabulary as you can. Try to use a lot of synonyms. Don't repeat yourself. Try to paraphrase the examiner's questions. So for example, if the examiner asked, what is your favorite food in part 1? A weak response would be something like, my favorite food is pizza, it is delicious. This is a weak response because they're just copying the wording from the examiner. So a better response would be the following. So a food I can't resist is pizza. I love the variety of flavor combinations I can create, such as ham and pineapple. You also get a higher score if you can use idioms and collocations effectively. So idioms are things like on cloud 9, which means very happy. and using collocations. So collocations are words and phrases that frequently go together. So for example, we will say make a mistake, not do a mistake. So it's important to kind of study idioms and collocations to, improve your vocabulary. Okay, the other category is grammar. So to get a good score in grammar, you need to use a variety of grammatical structures appropriately. So that's things like using different sentence types. So simple, compound, and complex. So I would recommend that you go back and review your grammar for what these different sentences entail. And it's also important that you use the right tense when you're answering questions. So typically while you're speaking, the examiner will want you to use past, present, and future tense. So it's really important that you review the different tenses. All right, the final category is pronunciation, and this involves a lot of different things. So for example, your ability to say the sounds properly, vowels, consonants, and clusters. So a cluster is something like a CH sound. Use the appropriate stress. So in English, there's two types of stress we could be talking about. So there's word stress, where you emphasize the right syllable. So for example, in the word apple, you want to emphasize the first syllable and not the second. And there's also sentence stress. So sentence stress is when you emphasize the content words rather than the structure words. So content words will be nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs. So the words that give the sentence meaning. So we're going to typically emphasize those words. So for example, my name is Heather and I teach English at Fanshawe. So I would be stressing the content words rather than the structure words. All right, pronunciation also entails using proper thought groups. So thought groups is simply where you talk and you pause in a place that makes sense for the speaker to understand. So for example, and it would be incorrect for me to say, my name is Heather and I teach English at Fanshawe. So in that example, I'm pausing in the wrong place. My thought groups are incorrect. So to say the sentence properly, I would say, my name is Heather and I teach English at Fanshawe. So by pausing in the appropriate places, the sentence makes sense. Okay, it's also important to use what we call rhythm. So rhythm meaning that there's a kind of consistent tempo to your speaking. So in this sentence, it would sound something like the following. My name is Heather and I teach English at Fanshawe. Okay, and you can also use linking. So linking is when you're kind of combining words together. So there's three different types of linking. So vowel to vowel, consonant to vowel, and consonant to consonant. And here I've given you an example down here. So a native speaker typically wouldn't say turn it up. They would combine the words together. They'd say turn it up. And that's an example of linking. All right, you also need to use the appropriate intonation to show meaning and emotion. So for example, if you're asking the examiner to repeat something, you would want to use a low rise tone when you're speaking. And if you wanted to show the examiner that you're excited about the exam and taking the exam, you're going to be using a more varied intonation in your speaking. All right, that takes us on to IELTS Writing. So IELTS Writing is 60 minutes, and there are two tasks. So for task 1, they recommend 20 minutes, and for task 2, they recommend 40 minutes. For task 1, you need to write 150 words. And what you need to do is you need to write a letter. And in the letter, you're responding to some sort of situation. And the letter will either be of personal nature, semi-formal, or formal. And then in task 2, it's 250 words minimum, and it's an essay response. So you're going to be discussing a general opinion, argument, or problem. So here are some common task topics that you might have. So for task 1, which is the letter, you might be asked to write to a new employer about a challenge that you're having at the job. You might be asked to write to a local newspaper rejecting a proposed idea. You might be asked to a landlord about a housing problem, or write to a friend about a recent or upcoming trip. In the essay section, common questions are the following. So how to solve a problem. So something like pollution. The pros and cons of an issue. So for example, children giving homework to children. The causes or effects of a situation, something like obesity. All right, the writing band score is assessed using a rubric, so similar to speaking, and there are also 4 criteria. So your writing, the examiner is looking at task achievement, coherence and cohesion, lexical resource, again, this is vocabulary, and grammatical range and accuracy. So on the writing exam, so each criteria is weighted equally for each task. However, task number 2 is worth twice as much as task number 1. So it's really important that you put more attention on task number 2. All right, so to get a good job in a good score in task achievement, you have to meet the required word limits. So for task 1, that's 150 words. For task 2, that's 250. And you also have to respond appropriately to the task with strong support. So it's really important that you respond directly to the question that you're given. Okay, so for task 1, that means achieving the purpose of the letter using the appropriate tone and style. And for task 2, that means providing strong arguments and evidence for whatever task you're given. Okay, coherence and cohesion. That means presenting your ideas logically, using effective connectors, and using effective paragraph structure. Okay, and then there's also vocabulary. So to get a good score in vocabulary, you have to use varied vocabulary. So again, don't repeat yourself, paraphrase effectively, and spell words correctly, and also use collocations effectively. Okay, and then finally there's grammar. So to get a good score in grammar, you have to use grammatical structures appropriately. So again, that's simple, compound, and complex sentences, and also use the correct tense. So as in speaking, the writing test is going to test your ability to use the different tenses, past, present, and future. All right, this brings us on to talking about some of the free preparation materials that are available for you on the internet and elsewhere. So a good website to go to is the British Council IELTS website, and they have different practice tests and exercises that you can do, and they'll also give you the answers to these tests and exercises. And in addition, IDP IELTS, they also have practice tests, exercises, as well as articles and videos that you can watch. All right, in addition, if you're based in Sarnia, the Lambton College Library now has an IELTS book that I donated to the library. So if you're in Sarnia, you might want to put in a request for this book where you can do some practice tests. And now we'll give a quick comparison between the IELTS and the CPIP. So for the IELTS listening, so the format, you can pick either the computer-based or the paper-based IELTS. However, the CPIP is only computer-based. Types of questions. The IELTS provides a variety of different question types, which we talked about earlier, but the CPIP is only multiple choice. In terms of speaker accents, on the IELTS, you'll have a variety. So you'll have British and Australian, but on the CPIP, it'll be a Canadian accent. So the speaker might sound more like me. How the questions are provided, here's a big difference. So on the IELTS, you're given all of the questions at the start of the test, and you'll know what they are throughout the entire exam. and you're able to change your answers throughout the course of the test. And the questions and the answers are written on the test paper or on the screen. For the CPIP, the questions are given after each section. So therefore, you will have to take notes. And once you're done a particular section, you have to move forward and then can't move back. So you're not able to change your answers. In addition, when you do have the questions, they're spoken to you. So you have to press a button to have the question spoken, and then the answers will be written on the screen. So it is quite different that way. In terms of reading, on the IELTS, again, paper-based or computer-based. CPIP is only computer. Types of questions, again, varied. CPIP is only multiple choice. Again, differences in how the questions are provided. So for the IELTS reading, you're given all the questions and readings at the start of the test, and you'll have them throughout. On the CPIP, the readings and the questions are shown by section, and each section is timed. And once the section is, the time is over, you must move on to the next section and you can't return to the previous section. All right, for the speaking exam, the IELTS is done face-to-face with an examiner, but on the CPIP, it's on the computer. In parts 1 and 3, the questions are shared verbally with the examiner in a conversation. And in part 2, you're given the questions on a little cue card. On the CPIP, the questions for each part are shown on the screen. And for each question, you'll have timed preparation time and then a timed recording. So it's very structured. There isn't a lot of time in between. Another difference is that on the CPIP, since you are doing it all on the computer, you're not able to ask for clarification or rephrasing, but you're able to do that in parts kind of 1 and 3 on the IELTS. In terms of writing, okay, again, the IELTS is either paper or computer, CPIP only computer. Word count, so when you're doing the IELTS paper test, you need to estimate how many words you've written. But on the CPIP, since it's done on the computer, it will show you how many words you've done. On the IELTS exam, you're going to be given both tasks at the same time, and you can look at them throughout. You're given timing recommendations. However, you're able to control how much time you spend on each task. On the CPIP, each task is timed, and you can only use the allotted time for each section, and you can't return once the first section is over. All right, so that was a lot of information in a very short amount of time, and we'll move on to Chris.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Heather, for such a detailed explanation, sharing your knowledge, common problems, recommendation in this comparison between CPIP and IELTS, so you can start thinking with your abilities which one will be more suitable for you. So let's move with our agenda. Now we're going with Chris. He will explain us how to book the test, managing results, and he will also give us some online preparation options. Chris has dedicated 24 years to the language education industry. He has taught English in South Korea, Australia, and Canada, and developed several successful test preparation programs that have enabled thousands of students to attain the scores needed for immigration, education, and employment. Currently, Chris oversees one of North America's largest network for independent IELTS and CPIP test centers. ILSC manages and supervises the test while the partners British Council and Paragon are responsible for creating and grading the IELTS and CPIP respectively. So thank you very much, Chris, for joining us today. The spotlight is on you. Thanks.
Thank you, Christina. Hi, everyone. Okay, so today I'd like to give you some information about some really important things about your IELTS registration and about your test day. You're already prepared with your English language skills being a very important part of your score. You also really need to know the knowledge of the test and how it's marked. And those are things that you've just learned from Heather. And then the last thing is really being physically and emotionally ready for the test day, because we know that can really affect people's score as well. IELTS is a great choice of test to take because it is accepted really worldwide. In addition to the Canadian government accepting IELTS, the Australian government and New Zealand immigration also accept the test. So it really gives you that global mobility with options. The other options that you have are in terms of the type of test to take. So there are academic and general training versions. General training is what's taken for immigration purposes. And with both of them, you have the choice of taking paper-based IELTS or IELTS on computer. Both of them have to be taken at an official test center. The IELTS online version is not accepted by IRCC. And the other main difference, of course, would be really personal preference. Are you more comfortable typing an essay on the computer or writing it out by hand, for example? The speaking test is face-to-face with an examiner in both cases. The availability is quite different. So paper-based IELTS has many different locations. ILSC has test locations all over Ontario. But IELTS doesn't make that many paper tests, only about 2 or 3 times per month, and they must be taken on Saturdays. In contrast, the IELTS on computer, there's not quite as many centers you can find, but you can take it, there's many test dates every week at these centers. The price is $350, including tax for either one. And another big difference might be how long do you have to wait for your results. So IELTS on paper takes quite a while. So 13 days, your results are released, but then your test report form, or TRF, that's your results, get mailed to you. So depending on Canada Post, which sometimes can be kind of slow, you'll probably want to give about 3 or 4 weeks before you need to submit your results. IELTS on computer is really fast. Often you get the results the next day or in 2 days. And there's no paper certificate. Oops, I hit a little fast. But you will right away get an electronic test report form. And that is in the PDF format that you can download right away. So how do you book the IELTS test? First, before you go to book, which you can do at the link given by this QR code here, that'll take you to our website, and you'll be able to choose from all the different testing locations that we have. You'll need to have ready a scan or just a photo with your phone of your passport, and make sure that you can see both the photo on the passport and your signature. When you fill out the application form online, you'll have to upload that passport picture. It can be PDF or JPG. And you'll also have to complete the payment, and doing those 3 things will secure your booking. You're going to receive an email right away that gives you a confirmation that your booking is confirmed. And then make sure to watch your email really carefully, because a few days before the test, you'll get an email from the test center that's really important. It has the time that you should arrive, the things you need to bring, and all the important information about that specific location. We recommend that you register around 4 weeks in advance or more, because it'll give you more options in terms of your speaking test time. But at ILSC, we try to keep some spaces around for last minute bookers. So we do. It is possible sometimes to register even up to 3 days before the test. If you have some special requirements, for example, if if you're living with dyslexia or have any other type of disability where you need some special arrangements, make sure to contact the center more than 6 weeks before the test. You'll need time for us to send your medical documents to Cambridge to get approved. So one thing to know, there's a lot of companies kind of involved with the IELTS test. So Cambridge, part of Cambridge University, the Cambridge Assessment, they're the ones that make the test. So they're the ones that write the test questions. IDP and British Council, they are responsible for managing the test. They also are the ones who do the marking of the test. ILSC Education Group, that's my company. We run the test, and we also offer the registration and customer service support for the test. So one thing that's important to understand is that each IELTS test center is separate. So if you register at an ILSC location, then you wouldn't be able to get support or ask questions from another test center. We can only see the result. We can only see the results and the booking of those people booked at our center. Now we do have many different test venues. Those are the locations where you can write the test. And it is possible to change your date at the same center or change to a different venue within ILSC's venues. But there are very strict rules about transferring your test date and about refunds. British Council and IDP make these rules, so we can't be nice if we want to. We have to really follow these rules. So just take care when you're making your booking. Anytime you want to change your date, which you can only do once, you will have to pay a fee. And it must be more than 2 weeks before your test date. If it's less than 14 days before your test, then it's not possible to change your date unless you have kind of like an exceptional reason. So an illness, or you got drafted to military service, something like that. The same goes with a cancellation. There won't be any refund unless you do it very early, or unless you have some kind of official reason why. So if for some reason, if you're sick on the test day, for example, make sure to go and see a doctor and get a doctor's note, because you will need to submit that in order to get a new test date or to cancel. Now, from my experience, I've seen a lot of students run into problems on the test day. So I just want to give you some important tips. First of all is arriving early. So we do see people running late. Maybe there was a subway delay and they arrive at 9:02 and the test starts at 9 o'clock. We're not allowed to let someone in late to the test. So check really carefully the email that you receive and make sure that you know which section is first. So are you taking the speaking first, or are you taking the listening first? And check the earliest arrival time. The test start time is different than the arrival time because you need some time for all the check-in activities. So plan your trip, and plan to have some extra time. You can always get a coffee or something before the test. We also really recommend, as soon as you get to the center, go straight to the washroom. Even if you don't really have to go, you're going to be sitting in the test room for 3 hours. So it's good to go before that. You will not be allowed to go to the washroom between test sections. So for example, after the listening test, you want to use the washroom, you're going to have to wait until the reading test starts and then when you go to the washroom, you're going to lose time on your test. So we recommend that you go ahead of time. I guess kind of related note, the only drink that you're allowed to bring is water in a clear bottle with a tight fitting lid. So you can, a plastic water bottle is okay, or a reusable water bottle, but it must be clear with no writing on the outside. So you could remove the paper label or bring something that doesn't have any writing on it. The other thing that we see a lot of times where a student will lose their money and their test will be canceled is if they forget to bring their ID. Or sometimes they bring a not approved ID. So it's really important that you bring your original passport to the test. We're not allowed to accept a photocopy or a picture of your passport on your phone. It has to be the original document, and it must be the same one you used during registration. So don't forget it. There's going to be some security activities at the beginning to make sure that your identity. They're going to take your finger scan and a photograph. Just be kind of aware that in the photo, they need to see your face clearly. So they're going to ask you to take off your hat, take off your glasses, put your hair behind your ears. So just so that you're kind of prepared for that. And they'll give you a place to put your belongings. You won't be able to bring anything into the room except your passport. You'll have to turn your cell phone off and put that with your bags, your purse, your watches, and hats as well are not allowed in the room. Okay, so on a paper-based test, you'll have the listening, reading, and writing from about 9 a.m. to 12, and then you'll be dismissed for lunch. And most centers will actually require you to leave the center for lunch and come back afterwards just at your speaking test time, because there might not be enough space for everybody to wait at the same time. If you're taking the computer delivered IELTS, the speaking could be before your main test. So again, check your confirmation email really carefully about that. I already mentioned about the results. So just again, think about when you need to receive the results, and that can also guide, which test you're going to take on paper or on computer. And if you get your results and you're not happy with them, of course, you could take the test again, but there is one other option, and that's called an inquiry on results, or EOR. And that means you're asking the IELTS marking team to remark your test. So when you're deciding whether I should do this, think about, what do you think went wrong? Was it you thought you did really well, but the score wasn't right? Or actually, I didn't do so well on the test. So if it's the marking, then you can pay. So you want to be confident that it might change. So you can pay some money to have your test remarked, and some senior examiners will look at your writing and speaking again. You can do listening and writing, but that doesn't usually change. And they're going to remark it. Now, if their score is lower than your original, you get to keep your original score. Your score is never going to go down. But if the senior examiner's score is higher, then your score could go up. You would get a new test report form. And the other great thing is that you get your EOR fee refunded. If your score stays the same, then there's no refund on the EOR fee. So that might be an option that you may want to take. You might have heard something called one skill retake. That means you get to do again just one part of the test. It's not accepted by Immigration Canada at the moment. It might be in the future, so something to look for. Okay, this is the same link I provided before. It takes you to our website where you can book the test, and just click book now, and you'll be able to see all the dates and locations. And wanted to let you know that you're able, when you register at ILSC for the IELTS test, you'll get some free access to IELTS Ready Premium, which is a great self-study and practice resource. It's different than the free resources that Heather gave you. So this is great if you just want to study on your own, do more practice tests and check your score and see how you can, and get some advice on how to improve. For speaking and writing, sometimes it can be a little more difficult to improve unless you have some feedback from a teacher. So we have an online IELTS preparation program that can be as little as $95 per week. We have study times in the morning or in the evening, and you'll study with an IELTS teacher that's going to give you advice and on your particular speaking and writing and how to improve. This QR code right here gives you the link for more information about our preparation. So we hope that with these resources and these tips and strategies, you'll be ready to give your best performance on the test that you need for your work permit and PR. Thank you.
Absolutely, they will. Chris, thank you so much for sharing this information and these tips. Already always check your email, bring your ID, the one you registered, go to the washroom so you won't have any problems to go through the test. So now we are going to reply some of the questions we have. The first one is, I want to register for an IELTS exam slot. Which is better, IELTS British Council or IDP? And Chris has already provided a link to register for IELTS exam.
Yeah, so I guess my answer to that is that there's no real difference. The test will be exactly the same, whether you register with a British Council IELTS Center or an IDP IELTS Center. So I recommend that you just choose one that has the most convenient location and date for you.
Okay, great. I have also shared in the chat some information about a center. We have as well the centers near you, so you can find there where are you and where are the centers, and some changes to the PGWP eligibility criteria, so you can go through that information as well. That's in the chat. Let's go through another one. Please, this one is going to be for Heather. Please repeat the yes, no, true, false strategy.
Yeah, sure. So in general, you will be getting the slides, but typically what it is if you see something where the wording is like 100% certain, so it uses words like always, never, must, typically when it uses that sort of wording, the question will be no or false. So if you're running low on time and you're not sure how to answer the question, that's one strategy you can use. And typically you'll be right. Maybe not all the time, but in general, it's a good strategy to use.
Good. As Heather said, you're gonna get the slides and also the recording, so you can go through all the whole session again. There is another one. I have already booked an exam, so how can I access the free materials to prepare?
So I guess it may depend if you booked with IDP or British Council. They both have free preparation, but there might be slight differences in access. You should have received a confirmation email right after you finish the booking, and there should be a link in there that you can use to access it. If not, you can try logging into the IELTS registration portal. You may find a link in there as well. And if all else fails, just contact the center where you booked your test.
Good, thank you, Chris. We have a question here. Can you please provide some information about PTE? I guess this is the PTE Core. I don't know whether Chris or Heather, if you can have any idea of this. Unfortunately, this is not a PTE Core webinar, so probably we cannot cover this question at this moment. But we're going to organize a webinar on PTE Core in the future. If you go through our social media, our YouTube channel, you will find also some webinars on the CPIP that might be useful for you. So then you can compare the CPIP and the IELTS. But as for PTE, I'm not sure if we can answer something today.
I've taken PTE Core myself. I would say in terms of the environment, it's very similar to CELPIP. But there's some differences in terms of the content and types of questions. So it's best to, go to the PTE webinar if Christina organizes one for you, or check out the PTE website. You'll see some sample tests on there that you can use to practice.
We will, absolutely. So we will let you know when we're gonna do that one. And any suggestions for writing?
Oh, well, but besides what I previously said, it's kind of hard for writing, to kind of do it on your own, because you're not going to get that feedback in terms of what band score you might have. You can take an IELTS prep test, but again, the IELTS prep instructor is going to be hesitant to say this is a band 6 or something, right? Because they aren't an examiner and they don't want to give you a false sense of where you are. But there are a lot of the test preparation booklets will give you answers at a certain band score. So for example, I think the IELTS book that I gave the Lambton Library here in Sarnia has examples of what a band 6 looks like. There are also some, I think I'm not sure, but don't remember if it's the British Council or the IDP website. They also have examples of writing responses, and it'll have the examiner's comment with it. So it'll say, okay, this is a band score 4, and this is why. I'll try to include that with the PowerPoint so you can look at those sort of documents. So that might be a place to start.
Thank you. What does CLB 5 or 7 means? So it is Canadian Language Benchmark. As I understand, if you just graduated and you will need to take any of the English exams since you graduated from college, you will need to get a CLB 5. Let's see, what else do we have here? Better chances of getting high CLB with IELTS. Really, they want to know if there are better chances to get a higher CLB. That will depend.
Do you want to take those?
Well, I wouldn't say that per se. Again, a lot of it's going to be personal preference, kind of based on the different. So you might perform better on the IELTS just because of how it's organized and the type of questions that you receive on that particular test. Same could be said for the CELPIP. So I wouldn't say that one is going to give you a higher score or another. I think it's going to be how well you understand the type of test that you've chosen, whether it's IELTS or CELPIP. And then sometimes it also depends on the material that you're given to read. You might be given topics that you're more familiar with. Even on the speaking test, you might be given topics that you prepared more for, and that might help you get a higher score. But I wouldn't say either one is going to be better or worse for that. So just pick the one that you think, plays to your strengths, and then do that.
A CLB 5 will translate to about a 4.5 in IELTS, and if you need the CLB 7, you're going for about a 6.0 in IELTS.
Someone wants to know if there's a difference between CELPIP and IELTS that Chris had covered as well.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit more. What I mentioned this morning. I've taken both IELTS and CELPIP, and I think one thing that can be an advantage for CELPIP is that there's a lot of visual prompts. Like you can see a video on a screen, for example, to speak about. So, or for the listening, for example. So if you're a very visual person like me, CELPIP could be better in that way. But one thing I noticed, and we sometimes get complaints about, is that CELPIP is taken in a computer lab, and the speaking part is done in the computer lab. With IELTS, you're in a private room with an examiner face to face, but with CELPIP, everybody's speaking into the microphone of the computer at the same time. That's not really a problem for me because I can live with distractions. But for example, my wife would not be able to not be able to do well without being distracted by people talking next to her. So I think, so again, it's personal preference. If you think that you can concentrate with lots of people talking around you.
Good advice. I will definitely get distracted as well. So
Yeah, and
another
that
way.
CPIP and PTE are both that way.
Yeah, good to know. Thank you, Chris. There's another one here. After booking the paper-based exam, do we get booklets for practice or any other online material?
Yes, you'll get the access to the online material I mentioned, but there's no books or paper preparation resources. Some centers might have them to sell, but you're just as good going to, like, Indigo, for example, has some IELTS preparation books as well, or online.
Okay, good. Any tips for speaking cue card?
Yeah, sure. I guess you're referring to the second part of the speaking exam. So with that, just kind of remembering how you're being assessed in terms of those 4 different criteria. So when you're thinking about your vocabulary, maybe you want to think about paraphrasing the questions. You have to remember too that the examiner isn't going to prompt you, so you want to provide, a lot of good details. So, and it's also important to use good organization and have things logically connected. Typically going question by question is the best approach. So, answering the questions in sequence, but trying to paraphrase, use synonyms, give good examples. That's what I would recommend for all aspects of the speaking test.
Right. In order to get the band 5, CLB 5 means each band 5. Writing, speaking.
No, it's different. I recommend going to the link that Christina gave you that shows the requirements, because you'll be able to find links to the equivalencies and what score you need for IELTS for each part to get that CLB level. It is different for the different skills.
Thank you, Chris. The pen paper exam is better or the online one for IELTS? I think you have also replied that question.
Yeah, and just to clarify, it's a computer-based exam, but it is in a test center as well as the paper-based. So both of them are in a test center. It just depends, if you're more comfortable on paper or computer.
All right, we have someone who's gonna take the IELTS test this Sunday. And could you please provide me with some quick inputs, suggestions, advice in writing?
Now, are these scores you've already had on the general, or is this scores you got on the academic? So they said they did it in April 2024, and they have the different band scores. It's general. Okay. So again, a 6 isn't. 6 is still a good score, and I think 6 is above what you need for PR purposes, if I'm not mistaken. And your overall band score seems to be quite high. But again, with writing, just all the suggestions that I talked about earlier, and again, understanding the rubric and how you're being assessed. Also, you have to make sure that you're responding to the exact question that you're given. Sometimes students will take it in a slightly different direction than what's on the page. So really make sure you're answering what you're asked, as opposed to what you want to answer. So, and spend some time planning what you want to write. That will help too. So I guess those would be my suggestions for the writing. I'm not sure how you've prepared for it in the past, but that's what I would recommend.
Yes, good luck. Let us know how it went.
Yeah. I also agree with what Heather said before. Just be really careful not to spend too much time on the first part of the writing. A lot of people take too much time on there, and as Heather mentioned, the second part is worth double the marks. So you want to give yourself enough time for the essay.
Is there a cooldown for retaking IELTS or CPIP?
No, you can retake the test as often as you want.
Okay. Well, let's see what else. The computer-based IELTS also have the speaking test in person and in private.
Yes, that's right, it does. Now, some centers are using video conference speaking, so it is possible for paper and computer, it's possible that you're taking the test over Zoom, but it's still going to be in a private room and you're face to face with the examiner, just that it's over a video call instead of live. But there's no difference in the speaking between computer-based or paper-based.
Great. Okay, I guess time is up. So I want to thank you, graduates, Chris and Heather, for joining us today, all the inputs you gave us. And I hope the best for all of you who are taking the exam. Good luck on Saturday. On Saturday, I don't know your name, but we certainly hope you the best. Remember, if you are from the business and finance programs from Lambton College, check your email so you can get that surprise for this month. We understand how important is the PR process for all our graduates, and that's why we are doing these events for you. So stay tuned, stay connected, and I hope to see you in our upcoming event. So thank you very much, everyone, and take care. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.